All right, I want to really, before we start here, just allow me to say thank you all to everyone for coming. I think once we're finished here, we're all going to want to shoot off, so I just want to really say thank you, particularly to the Enkel crew who have done so much of the behind-the-scenes work to make this happen today. Stephanie here said, watch out for Enkel, we're a force to be reckoned with, and in the clean-up yesterday I saw that in full power. It was really amazing. We have some fabulous people here, we have some fabulous people there, and this is a bit of an interaction. This is absolutely an interactive session. Some people haven't been here, and some people are probably wondering, why am I even here? That's okay too, I hope. Allow me to introduce them. This is Piers Verstegen from the Conservation Council of WA. We have Sky Croeser, Dr. Sky Croeser. She is an academic from Curtin. We have Dr. Kate Ringvall, Dr. Kate, I'm sorry. She is from IKEA, which is pretty provocative. We have Alison Xamon MLC, yes. Dr. Amanda Cahill, you know, from The Next Economy. We have Kate Raynes-Goldie, who is just a remarkable woman. She's previously been doing game stuff. I mean, we've been doing some games today, but just she more recently has been doing a lot of talking around the future. And we have Dr. Jose Ramos. So I thought, so we've got a few things here. We want to feedback a little bit from the ideas clash. But to start with, I wouldn't mind just, if we can, just have a little bit of a word from the Saka game. And I'm going to invite Jose to kind of give a little bit of a quick summary of what he experienced there. And then maybe we just have one or two from the room, what your experience was. And then we'll reflect on the ideas clash thing.
Well, to be honest, I don't really feel like I'm qualified to talk. Not qualified, but I was only in one of the four groups, so it would be good if I just said a few words and then maybe I'll pass around. And then it's better if we listen to everyone's experience. But I think the game provides some kind of experiential basis to think about the challenge of working across systems with different logics. I think that's the fundamental, for me, that's the fundamental kind of pedagogical experience. So, you know, people in business think differently. Why? Because you're running a business and you need to make a profit. I know what that's like because I run a small consulting business and I need to pay the mortgage and, you know, buy this and buy that, and I got 2 kids and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, there's an embodied experience of that, and it has to be fully respected, actually. On the other hand, if we don't have people who have who are fighting and committed to truth, to discovery, to investigation, then, you know, that's another thing, right? So that's another group of people, and so these are different archetypal sort of kind of energies. They have different logics, and Sohail Inayatullah talks about them as different quote-unquote epistemologies or ways of seeing the world. So they're actually fundamentally different ways of seeing the world and different forms of power. You know, the power of discovery that Newton or Einstein invoked that fundamentally changed the world is very different than the power that Google or Microsoft exerts in the world. It's a different, qualitatively different form of power, as opposed to the union movement. That's a different form of power too. Or, you know, the way that, you know, a military might exert power, or a police force exerts power, rule of law, institutional regulation, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the things. So I think that for me, the broader questions around building a new economy have to do with these different these different centers. So if we think of multiple centers, they're different centers. They're different bases with different forms of power and different epistemological forms, ways of knowing. And I think that for me, the game is an opportunity to step back and reflect on how do we learn across these different spheres? Who do we need to speak to across these spheres? What do we need to learn, and who do we need to become so that we can think in terms of building this new ecosystem that we want to thrive in Australia, Western Australia, the world. So I think that's probably enough from me. But I think it'd be good if we heard from a few other people.
Yeah, is anyone burning to share on that experience of the Sarka game? What do you call the game again? Sarka, so S-A-R-K-A-R.
So I think after having let that experience settle in for me today, what it kind of distills down for me, what I learned from it to take away, is that in order to maximise everyone's input into what we're calling this new economy, we need to take the time at the very start, whenever anyone comes into our new circles, to get to know them and to learn, on the one hand, what their goals are, but on the other hand, what they have to offer, and where those two things kind of meet, because they might not meet, and what they have to offer might not meet their goals, and that's why they're seeking. So once we overcome this kind of dominant paradigm of efficiency, and we take that time to get to know every individual rather than this person as a number, a category, even an archetype. Stop thinking like that and think of as individuals. That's when we will actually shift that paradigm.
So I think we got a great experience of a dysfunctional society in that game. I know that there's an extension of the game where we add a fifth element, where I assume we would experience a functional society. I'm really looking forward to the chance to play the game in that way and experience what it's like when we can really come together in harmony rather than in conflict.
Wondering now, I just wouldn't mind giving perhaps Piers and Alison a little bit of a moment just to talk to us about what their conception of the new economy is and what's... can you do that for us? Seeing as we have invited you here to speak and you're a very intelligent man, and Alison's pretty wonderful.
Thanks, Karun. I thought I knew a lot about the new economy when Karun invited me. I thought, oh yeah, I'll come and talk about the new economy. But actually, what I've realised coming here is that I know a lot about a small piece of the old economy that does profound damage to the environment and to people. And we spend a lot of effort trying to reset that and change that as environmentalists or whatever you want to call people who are concerned about this kind of thing, within the confines of the kind of political discourse that enables change around the policy and legal level. But I guess a reflection is, as someone who's probably more of a political economist than a neoclassical economist, I just think you can't divorce change making in the economy and the economy itself from the political system. And I think we're in this transformative stage at the moment in politics as much as in economics. And I think that's evident by this forum itself, because in fact what I'm hearing is people talk in ways that are actually embodying a new kind of politics around this stuff. And when I say politics, I don't just mean what's going on in Canberra. I mean, obviously that's part of it, but that's become this kind of anachronistic expression of a form of politics. But I guess what I'm interested in terms of the economics of power and the economics of supporting people to participate at a community level, to have leadership roles and to have, I guess, what you might call micro-political influence. How does the new economy actually facilitate that? And how does new technology that's coming in facilitate that? And thinking to the theme of the panel here, what things are going to look like in 10 or 20 or 30 years' time. I just think we're at this inflection point with politics. Big data is coming in a way that's altering our whole conception of things, and it's forcing us, just from my narrow perspective as an environmentalist, forcing us to think differently. I mean, if we have a data system that can track the provenance of every single unit of electricity in our electricity grid, and every single interaction and a change that goes through. When you apply that to other parts of our economy, whether it's the physical economy with waste or a whole lot of other, just the social economy of leadership and distributed leadership, there's a whole lot of profound changes that are just going to make our kind of current party politics just so profoundly irrelevant. I mean, it already is, but I just think that we're in this incredible inflection point, and for me, it's the connection between the economy and that. And I'll just the final point I'll make is that in Western Australia, I spend a lot of time thinking about the fact that we're just we actually are. We're one of the world's largest fossil fuel producers, and we've got all this money coming into our economy. We think of Saudi Arabia like that, this fossil fuel economy, but actually Western Australia is of that ilk. It's the world's largest gas producer at the moment, and we're going to have some economic disruption that we're going to have to confront around that. But the energy I get from this room and from this discourse is that that's actually just this irrelevant slice of this old economy, and actually there's a lot of money in there, but actually it's not that much when you look at the size of other types of the economy. I've just learned the gaming industry, which I personally have zero interaction with, is actually bigger economically than the entire film industry and the entire music industry. I mean, that just blows me away. These whole sectors of the economy that we're not even, visible to. So, yeah, I just think that we're in this really interesting geographical space with the amount of connection we have to energy and fossil fuels, but also the potential that can come from that and can come from this discourse, I think, is incredible.
I'm feeling like I'm going to ask each of our panellists who our audience is not familiar with, a little bit of a question so we get to know you. But I would like to start with Alison. When I spoke to Alison a month or so ago now, it was around, I was thinking how important it was that mental health, talking about mental health, is spoken about in this space. I don't want you to constrain your remarks to that, but just remind you that that's part of a really important conversation.
No, thanks for that. Yes, because that was the discussion we were having at the time. Because obviously, as a Green, there's plenty I could say about the intersection between environment and the economy. But I'm actually wanting to speak tonight about where the economy fits in with humanity. And it's interesting. It was very interesting hearing the comment that you just made. I wasn't at that session, obviously, but it sounds as though there's a fair bit of thinking around that melds quite heavily with what I was thinking about. Now, we were asked to give the question, to reflect on what the economy would look like in 2035, and I was thinking specifically on what it looks like in terms of embracing and recognising a diverse humanity. And I suppose that I was thinking about an economy which recognises the inherent value of humanity, an economy which recognises the inherent value of difference and is able to incorporate difference, is able to recognise that people's contribution to economy is something which should be valued, recognised, and I would also say an entitlement. And so part of the work that I have done, particularly in the past, has been trying to change employers' views, for example, of the inherent value of working with people who are in various modes of recovery from profound mental illness. And ordinarily, I think traditional economy would say, unwell, not particularly productive, here's your money, go away, leave us alone, you're isolated. And of course what we also know is that isolation is effectively death for humanity. It's the one thing that will actually kill people. And so it's how do you reconfigure it to say, well, you know what, this way, you come through the door, you've actually got an awful lot to contribute. There are inherent skills, there are inherent aspirations, there are inherent important contributions which we should be striving to capture, and we should be striving to ensure we are facilitating as much as possible. And it is about flexible work practice. So it is about saying, okay, you know what, this week maybe you just need to not be here and you need to be able to do whatever you need for your own self-care. And then next week you're going to be here and you're going to be able to do all this amazing stuff and we're going to capture this. Or it's about people with disability and recognising that all it sometimes takes is a change of thinking around how you incorporate ability and differing abilities, and how you ensure that you've got workplaces that are embracing of that. One of the things that bothers me, particularly if I think around how we treat issues of employment and engagement around people with disability, is we take this sort of charitable, paternalistic model towards people and say, aren't you lucky that we're giving you this opportunity? I think that's completely wrong. I think that it's utterly disempowering. And I think also an incredibly lost opportunity. So I think that I see a future where we create a voice for those lived experiences. We create a voice for those differing lives and differing worldviews, where people can come in and we recognise that workplaces are able to be flexible around that. Because the other thing is that the last thing we need is people being alienated from the economy and alienated from their participation within the economy as well. So I see really practical things that we can do. I see the government has a role in terms of facilitating and funding some of the extraordinary programs that are attempting to get up on the ground to actually support people who want to have those opportunities. But I think it's also more than that. It's about completely changing what I believe are inherently ableist views within the community around contribution and around what a worker must look like and what a worker must be able to do, and recognising that I'm not interested in an economy unless it doesn't bring every single human being along with us. And they're the sorts of things that I think we need to be re-envisaging. And then, of course, there's broader things, but I'll hold off for now because other people want to speak, around what it means to have a mentally healthy community and where the economy plays a role in that as well. But I'll leave it at that.
Sky's just done I haven't had a listen. I'm looking forward to, and it's perhaps a good opportunity to let you know that all the sessions over there were recorded, so we'll make those available later. Sky's just done a great presentation around gender and power. Any comments on the new economy in that?
Sure. So I think one of the central points that I was hoping to make in that talk is this idea that we need to consider reproductive labour and caring work as central to our ideas of a new economy as we move forward. That includes the things that are currently undervalued, so the work of educators, the work of people who are organising social change and sharing these ideas. This is a form of social reproduction and social change. But also the things that we tend to think of as outside of the economy. We tend to think of housework, we tend to think of unpaid childcare, we tend to think of reproduction as not part of the economy. But those things are. And a fairer, better, more inclusive economy will recognise that and have ways of moving forward. I also think it's really important that we look to the margins when we look for different visions of what the economy might look like. Often there are really interesting, vibrant, important practices of solidarity, of barter, of gifting that exist on the margins, partly because those people have been excluded from the mainstream economy. And we should recognise the expertise that exists among single parents, among communities that have trouble finding work, among people on low incomes. There are a whole range of practices there in terms of how people survive crises, how they look after each other, but also in terms of things like reusing and recycling and all of that out of necessity. That we should be looking towards and trying to incorporate and learn from in ways that support those people to be visible, to have their voices heard, to have their own projects supported. And when we think about waste, I think this is my final point, I think we have some really great conversations happening around waste these days about the tremendous wastefulness of our current economy. And one of the things that we often haven't been incorporating in those conversations is a recognition of the huge waste of human potential that our current economy has. Which is building on what you said earlier, but also even thinking about the people who are very thoroughly incorporated into the economy and are just working too many hours and are missing out on the many other wonderful things they could be doing with their lives. So thinking about waste in a more broad and encompassing way, where we think about all of the wonderful flourishings that humans could be participating in right now, is something that I think can give a hope for what we might be shifting towards.
Just wanted to take this opportunity to point out we had organised some childcare for the weekend, which I think is goes really important to one of the wasted resources we have in terms of parents who can't get along to this kind of thing. So that ended up, we didn't have any children coming along, and we've paid someone to hang out, and hopefully that was good. But just for the future, I think it's really important that we're incorporating and thinking about that. That's something we've been mindful of. Kate? Kate's just done a presentation. Kate is from IKEA. She's just just done a presentation on the circular economy and also big business. What's the role of big business in this? And can you talk to that a bit for us?
So if you missed out on IKEA 101. So I'm from IKEA Australia, and we obviously sit within IKEA Global, and IKEA Australia, despite some of the headlines, is an incorporated business in Australia. And yes, we pay taxes. Whether we pay enough taxes is a whole other argument, and we'd probably agree with you, but we also, let's face that one straight away. The other kind of thing that we get tarnished with, probably because we haven't been very vocal about what we do, is this whole fast furniture and unsustainable consumption piece. And one of the things that really was key for me, having spent a long time working in government, working in higher ed, and being incredibly damaged by that process and not getting very far. One of the reasons why I jumped to IKEA was because they demonstrated to me a value set that I had been looking for in government and hadn't found. And that's a whole other conversation that I won't go into now. But one of the things that IKEA is really good at is employing through their values. And, you know, there's a whole list. Togetherness, humbleness was one of our values, and they took that out recently because it was holding us back. Caring for people and planet, you know, responsibility for self, making decisions, all of those kind of common sense stuff that I had been looking for in government but hadn't found. But anyway, so IKEA has really grasped this concept of unsustainable consumption, and we don't want to be part of that, which sounds odd. You know, how does this large multinational company who makes furniture at mass, how do we even get to that point? And really, one of the things that we have started to do is actually talk about how we do that and why we do that. And obviously in WA you have had a watered down version of that, because you wouldn't probably know, but Perth and Adelaide were franchises owned by a single organisation. We've since bought them out, so IKEA Australia has bought them out. So you will start to hear me, probably mostly, talk much more on about what we do and why we do it. And consumption is a really, it's a insidious concept. And one of the things that IKEA has really started to look at is, if you are going to buy furniture, and we all will at some point need furniture and the stuff that all sits around that, we would much prefer that you buy furniture that you know where it's come from. You know what it's made of. You know how it's been made. You know that the people making those products have been treated fairly. Now, I could spend the next hour telling you how and why we do that. We don't have time for that. If you can just trust me that we have processes and the products are all made incredibly, you know, value sets and with a value chain that everyone is part of. And one of the goals for us is to absolutely get into leasing, getting into renting, getting into take-back. We're trialling in Tempe now in Sydney. How do we take back your furniture, IKEA furniture? How do we take it back and reuse it? How do we sell it back to other customers who want something from us that they maybe can't afford the full price, or they don't want to buy first-hand? Many of us, we like second-hand furniture. I am a self-confessed picker-upper of furniture off the verge. Excuse me. And I'm now not allowed to pick up anything else off the verge because I have too many. But really, it's a really big commitment for companies to really step out. And for us, circular is all about making sure that the products that we make are made, can be continued to make, that the raw materials that we make those products out of don't disappear. Why aren't we making the products that we use now out of our recycling? We would like to do that here, but in Australia that's an incredibly difficult concept. I mean, National Sword Policy has really highlighted that most of our waste is going overseas. And what a shocking thing that is, and what a waste of resources. So that is definitely where we are going. We're alone in that pretty much, and the retail space, as you would know, is a little contested. And we have probably held ourselves back by not talking about the amazing things that we do. We have 20,000 solar panels on our roofs on the eastern seaboard. But you wouldn't know that unless I told you that. But we do. We recycle 80% of our waste across the country. But again, you wouldn't know that because we haven't been very good at communicating that. So one of the things that we will start to do is really tell our customers, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. And probably stepping much more into that activist space that, you know, a lot of the big companies are really starting to do, because you need to know what we do. We want you to know what we do and why we do it, and that we actually care about the planet and we care about our people. And, you know, things like still paying penalty rates. Those are really important. Making sure that 50% of the managers that we have in Australia, and probably global now, are women. We're at gender parity across Australia, and that's normal. And that's not something that other companies really do very well, and probably we have held ourselves back by not talking about that. So one of the things will be to really start shouting about that. So watch this space.
Dr. Kate Raynes-Goldie, the Future Human Academy. I think future humans are kind of a bit of an important part of this process, yeah? Piers also spoke about the gaming industry, and like, obviously that's something that, how do we revolutionise the education, you know, in our new economy? Can you talk to that for us?
So my session this afternoon was talking about kind of bringing together how we prepare young people for the future and create a positive future, and how we can do that with games. And so I just finished a project with the City of Stirling that was a 6-day ambitious project where the first 3 days we created a game with kids, and then the second 3 days we actually ran it for the public, which somehow went off without a hitch, even though it was a little bit ambitious and really, really fun. But it was a bit of an experiment in, we often create games for education and engagement, but this project was an experiment in actually using the game creation process as a way to teach. And so what I'm really interested in and really excited about is a lot of the skills we talk about, how automation's we're going to lose 40% of the jobs right now because of automation. A lot of the skills that are hard to automate are things like creativity or change making or teamwork, kind of soft skills. And games are actually really good at, the creation of games require those skills. And so if we can use games as a way to kind of get kids interested in these things, they're a really great way to then teach them. So I think that I was quite happy with this project. The feedback I got that was actually unexpected was that in addition to problem solving, the kids were saying that it was really important for them in terms of teamwork and working with other people. And apparently that's a thing as well, where young people are having problems with social skills. So yeah, really excited about the potential of games for kind of empowering young people to really engage with and make a positive future, a positive new economy. And yeah, that's me.
I don't have a clever little segue to pass it to Amanda, but I'm wondering maybe you can start this little process of reflecting on our time together, or is there anything jumping to mind you'd like to share with us?
I'm someone who needs a bit of time for reflection, but I guess some of the things that's come out of every single session, and it's even come out of this panel, there's been some really the same words used over and over again. So people have talked a lot about the importance of shared values underpinning a shared vision. So processes like games and other tools to use to bring people together around that for a common purpose. But the importance of values and culture and relationships and trust building before anything else. So that's been definitely a theme. Resources, so waste has come up quite a bit throughout the day. Diversity, how do we work across difference, all kinds of difference. So whether that's, talking about, there's wasted potential, and there are people who are excluded, and we put people in categories whether it's paid or unpaid. But if there's a shared vision and we can all contribute, and the question around how we organise together is, how do we enable everyone to contribute in a meaningful way that is valued regardless of who you are or what you're offering? But that there's a flip side to that, which is kind of assumed, but it isn't really brought out, and it came out in the last session, which if that's going to happen, it also means a collective responsibility for the things we actually push to the margins, to the people who are low paid or unpaid. So how do we actually all take responsibility for and building that into everyday lived practice to enable everyone to do meaningful work that is meaningful to them? and to their communities. And power has also been a theme. Maybe I'm biased because that's what I talked about this morning. So, Piers, we talked about that this morning. But it has come through a lot in the discussion. Sometimes it's talked about as rules or hierarchy. But that question of, as we move forward, how do we work together in a way that enables, but also enables action? So not just enables contribution, but so different contexts are going to shape the relationships. And how do we actually develop the skills that we need? So somebody talked about mindfulness today, to actually be able to show up and go, well, we don't have all the answers. We don't necessarily know where we're going, even though we've got some shared kind of vision. So how do we actually come up with the rules that are going to work in this place for us to get to where we need to go? And embrace uncertainty and embrace emergence, which has also been a major thing. So it sounds a bit abstract, but I think it's actually the skills that we need, because when contexts are changing so fast, which is what we saw this morning, and there is still so much uncertainty about what's going to happen, and the planet is giving us some really interesting feedback loops that we don't get to control. How do we build the leadership across all communities that we can respond and that we can bring people together and move forward? And I think this is a really great starting point. You know, even dealing with some of the challenges today, how did we work together? How did we communicate? Did we support the leadership? And how are we going to move that forward for WA so that there's a strong network of people who can support each other no matter what happens next? So I just want to congratulate the organisers on that as a really good first step.
I guess I'd just like to acknowledge that point a little bit. I had a great conversation with Dave Palmer from the Centre for Responsible Citizenship and Sustainability here at Murdoch. He was talking to me about a book that he's been reading called Messy, and you know, actually messy can be actually really, you know, dealing with the messy, not being scared to step into messy spaces is something we need to be brave about, you know. And yeah, and I think there's a thing about as well, I know one of the things when I think about post-capitalism, thinking about this new economy thing, I think about something Noam Chomsky's often asked about, you know, what's your vision for the future, you know, what's our end goal kind of thing. And his response is, you know, it's not for me to say, you know, it's for us to work out together, you know. So, and that is messy, and, you know, this weekend definitely has been messy. I appreciate everyone's tolerance of that, or bravery in participating in that with me, and yeah, with us, and all the wonderful people that have stepped in to help that along, in all kinds of small and significant ways also. I think we're getting close to winding up. I know we've been working pretty hard, but I'd just love to hear from a few people with the Ideas Clash process. And I just want to shout out again to Enkel. That's a concept that Adam Jorlin and I'm sorry, Jordan Ivets, is it? A concept that they came up with. And I think that, you know, again, we're talking about provocations, but that experience, has anyone got anything they'd like to share, any group that would like to share from that process? I think, yes, Aisha, I think is definitely the best.
Okay, so in my group we had Mark, Naresh, Suresh, myself, and we were in room 2. So in actual fact, I think that everyone contributed to the final product. So do you want to hold up that Venn diagram? So yeah, how about that? Yeah, how about we do that? Okay, so teamwork.
You won't be able to read it, you won't be able to see the shape.
Well, you'll get a sense of what we're trying to communicate. So we had 3 short talks. The first one was on the electronic frontier, the second one was on housing affordability, and the third one was on cultural diversity and clashing those ideas. So that's why we've got the Venn diagrams, and at the middle, that's represented by the use of an app that we envisage actually tying this all together. So we've got lots of community gardens, cooperatives that are based locally, and there's a network all around the country. And that enables the local community to actually contribute their own cultural heritage, their richness, their history, also engaging. There was an issue with international students who are often feeling isolated, or even those who are considered homeless in the community, and it's all based around a barter system. So what this app does is actually a platform where all of the members of that cooperative group can say, oh, you've got chilies in your garden, or we want some spring onions, and there's a direct exchange. There's no money. And not only that, on that app, you can also upload pictures. It becomes like a social media platform. You also can upload recipes, media content, and it just connects communities together. It was also based on this idea of the container, which is this idea that if government or departments or councils just say, hey, look, we're going to create the infrastructure, here's a place, we're just going to trust community to creatively fill that in a really authentic, organic way. And with the app, it's also just a way for those communities to communicate with one another, and also about sharing energy. So using maybe blockchain or energy distribution, so people who are using solar panels or other renewable sources, and rather than sort of, just feeding it back into the power grid, again, it's based on a barter system, but it's about sharing resources collectively. You could even extend that to waste or other applications as well. So it's a pretty flexible, user-friendly app, and we know that there are already technologies that kind of do that, but pending sort of technologies that allow us to communicate telepathically in 2035, we still think that the app would have some functionality. What else did we covered the concept of leadership as a form of duocracy, so it's really driven by volunteer contributions, again, engaging community and promoting cultural diversity. And I think, have I missed anything from our group? Do you feel that I have represented accurately some of the ideas in the room? Yep, we're all good. I think that's all, and just to finish off, it's really about promoting genuine integration, community, and acceptance and friendship. That's us. Thank you.
I want to give a shout out as well to Aisha for her wonderful project called the Modest Fashion Project, which is, I think, a beautiful project. That I think people should check out. Anyway, have we got any other groups that are up for sharing from their thing? Yeah, would you like to come up? We've got this snazzy camera thing over here as well. So if you've got a sheet, but if not, just
I don't know where our sheet went. So I was in room 4, and in room 4 we had the 3 speakers were talking about donut economics. The second one was cooperative structures in business, and the third was the gifting economy contrasted with the current economic way that we function. And so our group took the approach of just kind of smashing together all 3 of those things and working out where the meeting points were, and we journeyed through distilling it down to a question, which was how can we integrate in our day-to-day lives the ecology on a global scale, on the ecology in the business sector, and then our personal ecology. And the most concrete way that we found to do that would to be promoting a movement in the youth. They're the future, and so it was like an invention of a hashtag that is something like gifting at 1. So I don't know if any of you have heard of the Spend Nothing on Wednesdays. where basically we make the economy fall over every Wednesday. So once a week, no one spends anything. And then as an extension of that, because our question was about a day-to-day practical infiltration of a new economy, we all informally commit to, at 1 o'clock, we give a gift. Whether that's buying lunch for someone, or giving some money to someone, or something else. You know, like I might have 2 bags and I want to give one to the op shop, and instead I'm going to give it to my friend. And then in that way, we all experience the receiving as well, because it's the same energy. The giving and the receiving is the same thing. And so in that way, we can, in a day-to-day way, experience what it feels like to have a different form of economy. So,
Okay, I think, unless anyone has something burning they'd like to share or say, we're right on, we're half an hour over time, but we're right on our hour that we had for our panel. So, just, yeah, again, let's start by thanking all our wonderful panellists, all the wonderful presenters that we had over the ideas match. Thank you so much. Adam, is there anything else I should be doing or saying at this point? No. So we have some drinks. We're going to have some nibblies out here. We had some plans for a truck with a PA and a band and stuff on the back, but that didn't fall through, which is probably okay because I think we're all really tired. So yeah, just thank you so much. I guess watch this space. This was a test space for a national holding of this New Economy Network Australia conference here next year, and I think we've been pretty successful, so I think that'll probably happen. So thanks.